You are brave. So, I'm going to start out here tonight, and I'd like to start with a classic piece. What's this all worth? You know, and it's only worth one thing. Only one thing. And that's when there isn't suffering. What is there? So that's what I'd like to talk about tonight. And it's metta. So I thought I would start by reading the Metta Sutta. You know. This is what should be done by those who are skilled in goodness and who know the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing. In gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Okay, all beings be at ease. That's really the metta. May all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, the medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and those to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects her life, her child, her only child, so with boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the sky and downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down. Free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down. Free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again in this world. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again in this world. That is the Metta Sutta. So I think just starting out here, I want to just define this word, because in our culture we have this word love, and it is extremely complex because it's held in so many different ways. And so I was looking around and went, oh, I know, I should read this, the best explanation I know of, which is actually from Stephen Levine, and it really describes the difference between what we know as love, which is a conventional emotion, and metta, which is a universal state. We use the word love, but we have no more understanding of love than we do of anger or fear or jealousy or even joy. because we have seldom investigated what that state of mind is. What are the feelings we so quickly label as love? For many, what is called love is not lovely at all, but is a tangle of needs and desires, of momentary ecstasies and bewilderment. Moments of unity, of intense feelings of closeness occur in a mind so fragile that the least squint or sideways glance shatters its oneness into a dozen ghostly paranoias. When we say love, we usually mean some emotion, some deep feeling for an object or a person that momentarily allows us to open to another. But in such emotional love, dun, 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 self-protection is never very far away. Still, there is, quote, business to the relationship. Clouds of jealousy, possessiveness, guilt, intentional and unintentional manipulation, separateness and the shadow of all previous, quote, loves darken the light of oneness. But, and this is metta, love has no object. Many speak of their unconditional love for another. Unconditional love is the experience of being. There is no I and other, and anyone or anything it touches is experienced in love. You cannot unconditionally love someone. You can only be. You can only be unconditional love. It is not a dualistic emotion. It is a sense of oneness with all that is. The experience of love arises when we surrender our separateness into the universal. When we surrender our separateness into the universal. It is a feeling of unity. You don't love another, you are another. There is no fear because there is no separation. So that is kind of a good explanation of what metta is. And so we work here on kind of cultivating. First we have to see how things work, and we see how we cause suffering and how we experience suffering, and we realize that on some level that the second noble truth, what is the cause? And we actually began to learn the cause in just being very silent and listening and stillness and taking and making our emotions and our mind and our thoughts and all our little interactions here, we blow them up 10 times their normal state. And so we get to see how it operates. So Ajahn Chah used to say that, these phrases are really not necessary. That all you really need is insight. But the problem is that a lot of us don't have the capacity to have enough insight. Therefore, we don't get to that sense of openness and ease and unconditional acceptance and kind of surrender to how it's happening. We don't get that. So we have to work on it. One of my, he's just a lovely man. Let's see if I can find it there. And again, it's just, he translated one piece of this, but I'm just going to do the old translation because I kind of like it. Discourses on pure love that has driven out all else, vimutti, from the heart-mind. So discourse on pure love that has driven out all else from the heart-mind. This was said by the Exalted One, the Worthy One, as heard by me. Monks, whatever ways there are of making merit to form grounds for rebirth, they do not have even 1/16th of the value of pure love that has driven out all else from the heart-mind. That has driven all else out from the heart-mind. Pure love by itself, the driving out of all else from the heart-mind, far surpasses them as it brightens, heats up, and shines brilliantly. Just as monks, whatever light there is from all the stars, it is not even 1/16th the light from the moon. The light from the moon by itself far surpasses them as it brightens, heats up, and shines brilliantly. Likewise, monks, whatever ways they are of making merit to form grounds for rebirth, they do not even 1/16th the value of pure love that has driven out all else from the heart-mind. Pure love by itself, the driving out of all else from the heart-mind, far surpasses them as the brightness heats up and shines brilliantly. So, the value of this practice ultimately is an unconditional state that reflects the truth or the understanding of what happens. And it's nothing more than that universal love. And I'm not saying, because a lot of times the personal love sometimes connects to or reflects into, so it has a direct link into metta. But it also has all these I, me, mine distortions, So it's a bit complex. So we come here and they talk about them as the Brahma Viharas, the heavenly abodes. And so one way I like to talk about it is that there are what we can call the heavy emotions and the light emotions, or the dark emotions and the light emotions. And that the heavy emotions of wanting and fear and jealousy and anger and possessiveness and hatred and fear, and these are the heavy emotions. And we have to get to know them and see how they affect us and how they distort and harm ourselves, and if not understood or controlled, harm others. And so there is the basis of understanding, getting to know them. And I think a lot of this is getting to know them in the sense of how they kind of knot us, twist us, disturb us. And that we begin to see that what I was talking about the last few nights, is the sense that there's a place in the center of everything. In that center of everything, when there's this sense, and one thing interesting in the Metta Sutta is it says ease. So we're talking about ease. That's what's repeated. So it's this place of non-struggle. And when there's non-struggle, then there is, in a sense, there's a non-distortion. And therefore, the practice is a state of fearlessness. When there isn't fear, and fear lives in the mind, not in the heart. there is not a sense of separation. No. So it's interesting, the kind of I always think the near enemy is one way of how do you know the difference between love and metta, because I think they're between the kind of relative and the absolute, or the relative and the universal. Its near enemy is attachment. And its far enemy, greed. So it's just like having a barometer to just know, if there's attachment in there or greed, then it's probably not it. Because it's based on this fearlessness, which means there has to be this state which we do train ourselves in the mindfulness, which is that place in the center, which is not leaning into, concocting or mental proliferation or making anything up about what we like or dislike, or trying to push away from it. It's just sitting in the center, And sometimes it's, lots of unpleasantness, and sometimes it's lots of pleasantness, but there's still the center place. And if you're able to stay there, then there's a series of experiences, and I think this thing around ease that's repeated is huge. And it's interesting because we have a culture that, with all the fancy technology and all the, the miracles of, air conditioning and heating and all this stuff, that we've been able to control our environment to such an extent, but also there's in the kind of cultural dilemma, I see a general anxiousness that is built on. And this is counteractive to that kind of cultural anxiety. And it is based on getting really comfortable in your skin for whatever, purposes. And trying to find that the only freedom, it's not so much about, quote, enlightenment. It's really about lightening up. It's just kind of lightening up. And starting to have some ease and be able to have the wherewithal and the skill to disparage that anxiety, and because it's going to come, that's life. That's what's built in here, And it's in a sense, there's this whole thing of there's two different aspects of practice here. One is if you can sit and really experience the way the world is, your heart will open because you will see the truth of how, screwed up it is. And your heart will naturally open, and that's one way. So that's, in a sense, a passive way of working. There's also the practice itself, which is the metta practice which the Buddha taught as a counteraction to fear. And it really goes to, a story of the Buddha that some of the monks went to this forest to do their practice. And they went there, and instead of feeling kind of peaceful and everything being fine, they say there was ghoulish sounds and rotten smells and all sorts of considered in their kind of terminology, the spirit world was tree spirits and different energetics were causing harm. And so they turned around and said, hey, this is not for us. So they go back to Buddha and they say, hey, that place, forget it. That's not a place to practice. And the Buddha said, no, I'm going to send you back. But I'm going to teach you a practice. And this practice is the simple ability now to infuse what would naturally happen if you could really see and experience things. And the infusion would be the result of that seeing. So, in a sense, I think sometimes there's is it the Church of Religious Science? I think, where they do, and I got beat up for this one. It's not affirmation, but there is something very much about the power of the mind makes up our world. Okay? So we sit here and we actually have to look at our mind. And both the negative and the positive, all that stuff about it. And we have the power to begin to infuse our experience with this metta, this loving kindness, this ease of being, which has some very unusual effects that go along with it. So he taught them this practice, and they went back and they sat and they practiced this practice. And the rotten eggs and the ghoulish sounds and kind of all the rustling of the trees and the winds and the spirit things that happen, is they say that they were transformed. And that they became protectors of the Dharma. So that it became a great place of peace for people to come and experience the loveliness of being in nature and being here. And that is a possible, it's actually kind of an ED or a CD or a power. And we have, each one of us have that power. And it's a power in the sense of our minds can go negative or they can go positive with things. And so here is a practice, just in a supermarket, walking in the supermarket and you kind of like, you're walking and you go, oh, may I live with an open heart. And what kind of power a simple statement like that can have on how we're seeing and experiencing and touching the world in some way. Because there's always this interaction going on. Mm-hmm. And that, it could be just, you have a big smile on your face because you feel it and somebody comes around the corner and rah, 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 they look up and they go, oh, and it changes their day. I don't know, this person was just, I came around, I was right by the freezer, and there they were, and gosh, they were lit up like a light bulb, and it changed my day. You don't know. So, part of this practice is the fact that we begin to infuse ourselves. And why in the morning when I say, okay, you have to know where you're going, you have to kind of point your have some intention and direction, and make it high. And make sure you get the reality piece straight, because you're in the river, it's going down. You're gonna, you're gonna go over at some point. So you're all kind of terminal. We know that. And that because you're terminal, that you get that. That then you go, well, then if that's so, then and this is it. Then how do I want to be in this? How do I want to, make this time? And how am I going to exchange myself with the world? That's it. It's a question, because we're such fearful creatures. Where there's an I and a me and a mine. And there is, what they call the three poisons, And, actually in Tibetan they have 5. So there's, greed, hatred, ignorance or delusion, pride, and jealousy. That's kind of what happens. So we need to counteract that. And we come here and we kind of strengthen ourselves and sensitize ourselves to the possibility of stepping back into our world. Times stronger with lightness and brightness. Why not? You got anything else to do? Really? If you know what you know because you've been here, it's kind of like knowing all sides of the coin here. And then getting that, okay, I can do this. And the thing is, part of this practice is the fact is that we're always forgetting. And so we're strengthening the power. The mindfulness is actually, I talked about it as just remembering. So, you sit in the morning and you don't do anything. You sit there and just kind of sit there and which breath was that? But your intention is moving you towards, during the day, hopefully then, there is a remembering that can happen. You suddenly, in a supermarket, while you're driving your car, while you're in the middle of an exchange with someone, you kind of feel your breath or your body or something, and you wake up and you go, how am I holding this? And I have to, since I did one piece of Stephen, I'll do another one here. Stephen Levine. Sometimes it breaks my heart to watch my mind. Cold self-interest, insistent fear and judgment, whispered insults, vengeful fantasies, triumph and despair. A condition unfolding so impersonal, we take it personally. Sometimes aghast at the casual cruelty of even minor fears and celebrations. Sometimes it breaks my heart to watch my mind. And sometimes it stays broken long enough to touch even this pain with love. Sometimes the mercy washes even Mrs. Macbeth's hands, turns tragedy to grace, and makes it all worthwhile. Sometimes the mercy washes even Mrs. Macbeth's hands and turns tragedy to grace and makes it all worthwhile. Sometimes it breaks my mind to watch my heart. Sometimes it breaks my mind to watch my heart. So, we have this possibility of supporting and training and using our power of remembering to bring lightness and brightness to our life and our experience. That is, I think, all of this work boils down to this. Simple as that. And as it boils down to that, then we have, in these higher emotions, we have this fundamental base, which is this universal state of openness and ease and non-fear and a state of interconnectedness or non-separateness that exists. So, we kind of get it. That's what happens. But then there are other kind of aspects of this. And one of the aspects is that, kind of in the refinements, is that in this process of looking at how, in a sense, how we treat each other in the bigger sense, and we see this Buddha's first noble, it is noble, the first noble truth, that life is, when misunderstood in an untrained mind, is suffering. And that suffering through unconsciousness is continuously going on. And so what we begin to see is that, there's the difference between, let's say, I feel sorry for you. There's a difference between saying that and I am with you in your pain. One is kind of looking down on someone, and the other one is actually making this human connection that says, if this river has been going on forever, then I too have suffered like you. And because I've suffered like you, and I know in my bones that I've given myself over to know this, then I can be with you in your suffering. And that we have the word compassion. And compassion is the capacity to not shy away from, not get above, not get outside of, but actually allow truth to inform. This is by Viktor Frankl from Man's Search for Meaning. He who lived in the concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from the man but one thing. The last of human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. When a man finds that it is his destiny to suffer, he will have to accept his suffering as his task, his single and unique task. You will have to acknowledge the fact that even in suffering, he is unique and alone in the universe. No one can relieve him of his suffering or suffer in his place. His unique opportunity lies in the way in which he bears his burden. The unique way he bears his burden. And so, I read this because I think and I hope you don't. I hope you don't suffer. But when you do, it can either be something to turn you away from life, or it can be something, this is about the compassion, it can be something that, breaks you open and allows you to see the consequences of the fierceness of this living. And how, in so many ways, it's quite uncontrollable. So, I'll read a David White poem here. I read this and I actually cried when I read it, because just this evening I thought, well, I've got to find something to talk about. But I don't know why, it just kind of hit me. It's called In the Beginning. Sometimes simplicity rises like a blossom of fire from the white silk of your own skin. Sometimes simplicity rises like a blossom of fire from the white silk of your own skin. You were there in the beginning. You heard the story. You heard the merciless and the tender words telling you where you had to go. Exile is never easy, and the journey itself leaves a bitter taste. But then, when you heard that voice, you had to go. You couldn't stay by the fire. You couldn't live so close to that live flame of that compassion. You had to go out in the world and make it your own. You couldn't stay by the fire. You couldn't live so close to the live flame of that compassion. You had to go out in the world and make it your own. So you could come back with that flame in your voice, saying, listen, that flame is your voice. This warmth, this unbearable light, this fearless love. It's all here. It is all here. You probably say, well, why didn't you just tell us the first night and get it over with? But it's actually a process that we have to kind of see things from so many angles and have to come up against our own blocks and barriers to our own heart. And I described it, and so much of this work is it's kind of like skin. And skin is just so many layers, just tons of layers, upon layer upon layer. And it seems like, sometimes I think it actually grows on the outside. And what this is going on the inside. And from the inside, we begin to thin the layers out. So you get tender. You kind of know your neurosis. And you're okay with it. You're okay with it. It's a special, unique neurosis that you each have been carrying. From my view, for not just this round, this has been going on for a while. And this is a unique chance this time to actually work on it. And you've all come here because there's something that you know about the inside, about what's moving you. And so you have to explore and know the suffering from the inside. And sometimes I think, all that foolishness. All that foolishness. You know it. You have your story. Everybody, if I sat down, give me 10 minutes. All that foolishness. I like that. Still, I keep thinking what Marv said about mercy. That undeserved forgiveness. Undeserved forgiveness. How hard have you been? How well have you created the perfectionist and the judge and the one who's supposed to win? And how you have failed. You failed perfection. So compassion. It gives such sweetness to the suffering. It makes it, in some ways, not just bearable, but there's a power in it, a unique power. We want to run from it, but actually, it's a power that, like David White was saying, there's some kind of flame there that is about the life burning, that brings the passion in this, sometimes this hopelessness. It brings that. Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and thinking the bus will never stop. and the passengers eating the maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in the white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, it is I, you, have been looking for. And then goes with you everywhere like a shadow or a friend. Only kindness. I have their name somewhere, but I don't have one. It just says in Colombia. I was trying to remember that.
She said she loved him.
Yes,
Naomi Shema, that's right. Great Palestinian poet. Yeah. So there is this piece of work you have to do, and I think when she talked about the sorrow, that you know what that's about. Because if you don't face it, and you don't let it touch you and open your heart, then no kindness can come from you. No compassion can come, only pity or I'm sorry for you. Not I am you. I am connected to you. So we work with this. You will work with this for a long time. Because it's just, there's a piece of this that's so profound. Now, that's also just one side of things. Because there's another side. It's like two sides of a coin. Our life is that there is, on one side, we see the complexity and we see the confusion and the mistakes and the sorrow. And the cruelty and confusion and the power and the abuse. Everywhere. But at the same time, there is this phenomenal thing about, when I was talking the other night about the sunyata, the emptiness on one side, and the other side, the tatat. Yes, one says, I know how to let go. It's all, I have this power. And I have this power to say yes. And it is this kind of dichotomy or dualism that happens where also the coin says one side there's suffering and there's sorrow and there's this capacity to be held by it. But what's the other side? And the other side is this. It's great having these little grandkids, and they're, they're almost, two of them are almost 2 and 4-year-old, and when they're happy, they are happy. They are so happy, but only a second can go by and they go the other way. miserable. So, but it is the two pieces there. And part of this whole practice, I see, is our capacity to allow the truth to touch us. And so for many people, I find the sorrow is hard to deal with, and it's very difficult piece. But also, I find that sometimes the joy is difficult for people to handle. You know? And so there is also, just as there is working with the kindness of, and the sorrow, and the truth of suffering, there's also the joy and the lightness and the absolute exquisiteness of everything is perfect exactly the way it is. Exactly. There is not a thing out of place. And that we can see that again and again. And the practice is asking us to hold this dichotomy. 1 minute, you're in tears. I read this poem earlier. This one by Dave White, and I was just like, I don't know, some line in there about where I put it in the line.
Over there, on the right. On the right. Under the paper, by the bell.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. No one person can do this. You couldn't stay by the fire. You couldn't live so close to the live flame of that compassion. You had to go out in the world and make it your own. Exile is never easy. And the journey itself leaves a bitter taste. No. So we hold these two pieces, and we encounter both, and we are moved in this experience of living by, it is a higher, they talk about these, the higher emotions, this loving ease, maybe better than loving kindness, loving ease. And then there is this, the kind of the, there's a bumper sticker, mean people suck. It's like, oh God, it's really true though. There are, mean people suck, and there are mean people, and so, and it causes all kinds of stuff to happen, and it perpetuates itself. And we have it in each of us inside it too, the kind of the tyrant, and the abuser, and all that crankiness, and boy, it's there. And also, there's a little 2-year-old in there who is looking at, wow, how did this appear? Where did you come from? What planet is this? And one of the things I can see in my teachers, I wanted to talk a little bit about it, because I think that the thing that's been so influential in my life has been, obviously there was an incredible amount of suffering and confusion and bullheadedness and rebelliousness and, egotistical, playing this thing of I'm the greatest, this little coin, the selfing coin I call it. One side is I'm the greatest, and the other side, I'm the schmuck, and they suddenly you start seeing that, oh, it's the same thing, playing, and you're just doing the same thing. And I think part of the piece of getting to India, and I said last night, I was in this group in Berkeley. They were called the Tibetan Floating Lotus Magic Opera Company. And my yoga teacher was Surya, and they were founders of Lama Foundation in New Mexico. And Surya had been in India with this Michael Riggs, who was a tall, like 6'4" LA surfer, who was incorrigible, and was the kind of sadhu that turned Ram Dass on when Richard Alpert came to India. So when I first got there and I was with the Karmapa, he came to live with me. And so, and that helped me, how do you put a skirt on, and, put, horse manure in your hair, and to make threads, with pine sap and all that stuff, And so outrageous, completely outrageous, And my teacher that first year was this Lama Tikkun Yeshi, and there's a picture of him. He was a love bug, I spoke of him one night, of just how generous and kind, and I never saw any, I never saw him get angry, got anything. He was just, whatever had happened, he was pure metta, pure love and kindness. And because of that, he became he wasn't then, and an exceptional kind of world teacher. Thank you very much. That was his best line. And it didn't matter. He gave you something, he would say, thank you very much. And then the other thing was, you were my mother in your last life. He was always into that. And he was always smiling. So a lot of, I think what I learned from these teachers, a series of teachers, was first of all, they saw in me what I didn't see in myself, which was how bad I'd been, and how there was a judgmental part of me that couldn't forgive myself, for a lot of the damage I had caused in my family system as well as around me. And then it was like drops of their water, in the sense of their love and their kindness was infectious. It actually began to change me inside. And I owe them my life, fundamentally, all these years. And I didn't know a lot about joy then. But I saw it in them. Therefore, I also very much trusted in their experience of what it could be. Because this is about the end of suffering. Truly. So I think the joy is something that, you have to really start with yourself, and you have to find again that little kid in you that was so amazed at a blade of grass, a tree, a peacock, a turkey, the sound of a bird, actually the ordinary. And that somehow was a joy to be there for it. Now the fourth, they call also these the pillars. The 4 pillars. And the 4 of these pillars, so you have that kind of universal love that we work on and keep working on, and see that sometimes it has these lines through personal love into it. But it is something that we have to remember, we have to keep practicing. It is really the grocery store, the highway, the byway, the library, everywhere. Remember. And then there's going to be the truth around sorrow. And I always, when I think of it, I always think of the person which I use over and over again, this person I saw at Mother Teresa's in Calcutta, who was the person who was the sister who was sending those in the hospice who weren't ready to die yet, sent them back on the street. I always thought, now there, what's that like? To be that person and to do it with such, with this kindness, because they had to bring somebody else in who's, really in the process. And they kind of had made it through, and they only have so many beds. And so I've always thought about that woman when I saw her, and I kind of watched and, and went, oh, whoa, what does that take to be that person? To be there. I thought, whoa, not me. I could never make that kind of choice. I would just, blah, 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 But this 4th pillar is really that holds it all. And I'd like to read you this from, I think, Bhikkhu Bodhi on this word equanimity, which is there can be, and I'm trying to find some words for it, that from this practice that, from the joy and from the steadiness, that everything is everything, and it's kind of a callousness of the truth of how things happen. So there's kind of a distancing ourselves. And this is about the power of connecting, of actually getting in there, in the blood, in the guts of life. But you need something to do that. Otherwise, you're going to run. And what you need is this fourth pillar of equanimity. So I'd like to read this to you. Equanimity rooted in insight is the guiding and restraining power for the other three sublime states. It points out to them the direction they have to take and sees to it that this direction is followed. Equanimity guards love and compassion from being dissipated in vain quests and from going astray in the labyrinth of uncontrolled emotions. Equanimity being the vigilant self-control for the sake of the final goal. I love that. Equanimity being the vigilant self-control for the sake of the final goal does not allow sympathetic joy to rest content with humble results, forgetting the real aims we have to strive for. Equanimity, which means even-mindedness, gives to love an even unchanging firmness and loyalty. Firmness and loyalty. It endows it with the great virtue of patience. Equanimity furnishes compassion with an even, unwavering courage and fearlessness, enables it to face the abyss, the awesome abyss of misery and despair which confront boundless compassion again and again. To the active side of compassion, equanimity is the calm and firm hand led by wisdom, indispensable to those who want to practice the difficult art of helping others. And here again, equanimity means patience. The patient's devotion to do the work. So that is this kind of fourth pillar, which in many ways there's a lot of the work that we could do here that's not based in getting lost in as I said, the emotions of either the getting so lost. They say if there's too much joy, then we lose the characteristics of, we forget about impermanence, we forget about suffering, and kind of the selfless nature of things. And that with the sorrow, we fall into the pit of despair. And so this holds that, so you can kind of, it makes it possible just to make the thing bigger, so you can hold more of it. So I think I'm going to end there, since I've been talking and talking. And you've been listening. Probably, I know how it goes. You hear a few words, you go off, you think a little, then you kind of scratch yourself a little, and then, just a bunch of words. Okay. This is Denise Libertad. It's called The Fountain. Don't say there is no water to solace the dryness at our hearts. I have seen the fountain springing out of the rock wall and you drinking there. And I too, before your eyes, found footholds and climbed to drink the cool water. The woman of that place, shading her eyes, frowned as she watched, but not because she grudged the water, only because she was waiting to see we drank our fill and were refreshed. Don't say there is no water. That fountain is there among its scalloped green and gray stones. It is still there and always there, with its quiet song and strange power to spring in us up and out through the rock. Too long. We only have an attention span of 20 minutes.
My schedule is different. Well, mildly different.
Mildly different. Okay.
We meet tomorrow at Wood Park at 11. So the schedule is posted down the Stone House. We'll have a sit in the morning. It'll be a half hour. And then we'll have a re-entry Dharma talk. And then we'll have at 7 o'clock, we're going to deconstruct the temple. It'll take about a half an hour. Or if that's not finished, we'll do it after breakfast, which will be at 7:30. And there's a sign-up sheet down there for people who are interested in some extra yoga jobs. There's lots of things to do tomorrow to deconstruct. There's still quite a few blank spaces down there, so please take a gander at that when you get down there. This evening would be good, and sign up for something. There's plenty of time to bring the things back in your cabins. In your cabins, if you're in a cabin, there's an instruction on how to clean the cabin, and there should be a spray bottle and something to clean in there with. And if there isn't, then in the stone house in the kitchen closet, we can hook you up with something. So please do your best to make that tomorrow morning as immaculate as you can make it. And then if you have any bedding that you borrowed, if you have a blanket or cups or a folding futon, please bring it to the stone house and we'll have a place for their staff in the back. We have a lot of packing to do. We have John's car and Rich's car. We'll take all those Azatons and Zappos down the hill at the 7 o'clock marker. So we do need like probably three or four people who want to do the deconstructing up here. Any questions?
What are the towels and pillowcases?
In the stone house, there's a little basket down there. Give it to me because most people brought their own bedding. So, any other questions?
So we end at 11, so we don't do lunch?
Well, actually, it's posted down there. No lunch tomorrow. No.
Okay.
We have council at 9:30, but there's a space in between 7:30 and breakfast. So the regular kitchen crew will do the kitchen cleanup, and then there's 2 extra yogis that are going to help Margo and Tom pack up. A couple of extra yogis in here to make sure this gets reset back up, and then a couple of extra yogis down in the stone house. We'll have council at 9:30. There should be enough time between breakfast at 7:30 and 9:30 to do all of this with so many of us. We'll make it work. Yes?
So the Quakers are having their service tomorrow here, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll be down at the stone house. Same thing as last Sunday.
And we'll set up in a circle down here, like for council.
Yeah, pull everything out.
And do you know, was that a regular service last Sunday? And in other words, are they going to be here all morning?
Yes.
I'm thinking about driving my car.
We need to be out of here and cleaned by 9.
I'm just thinking about taking down my tent and being able to pull up here.
I think that'll be fine. But yeah, oh yeah.
We'd be using all our chairs and stuff now.
No, we're going to sit here tomorrow morning.
Sit here in the morning.
Everything's just stays the way it is, and then at 7 o'clock, we'll start sitting at 6:15. At 7 o'clock to 7:15 or 7:30, we'll have some cars out here, and we'll just gypsy, the old gypsy camp, tear down.
Yes.
Should the bathhouses be finished with by everybody by a certain time?
By 9:30 time, if
So
it's
they can be
possible,
cleaned.
yeah,
Yeah.
that would be great. So if you have a task like that, it's still your task to clean. That will not be obviously not a lunch or a different service.
We need a toll ladder.
In the morning.
We need a toll ladder.
Oh, we can get that down.
There's one
It's
on
outside.
In the afternoon, there are 70 people coming in. for camp, for a week camp.
Okay.
So, back and back.
Yeah, it's over really tighter than they've ever done it before.
And by afternoon, do you know about what time?
Pardon?
Do you know about what time?
I don't know what time, but I know they're coming in the afternoon.
Oh, exciting.
Yes.
I hope they like us.
We're not going anywhere.
I'm sorry, did someone ask a question?
No
Okay.
questions?
Sign up.
Okay, great. Let's go. 10 minutes, and then I'll do a short metta just to close. Or we'll do a metta now. It's already. That seems appropriate. Got stuck with it. You don't do the last sit. We're not doing the last sit. This is not the last sit. You okay now?
Margot, I know you want to. Margot and I always.
Okay. So, we're out here. We're going to just bring our attention to our big hearts and breathe into those big hearts. And that kindness that what's that? Pronounce name. Naomi Shai. That kindness. Maybe this sense of sorrow, the ending and retreat, endings and beginnings. You just recognize that for a moment. Just connecting with your own heart and the truth of where we are in time. For yourself, your own body. And then out into the community here. May I live with an open heart. May whatever covers my heart be dissolved. May I live with an open heart. May whatever covers my heart be dissolved. Just breathing in this kindness, this ease. This connection, this love. And then from that center of yourself, expanding it out into this room, this community. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be healthy in your body, in your heart, and in your thoughts. May you be free from any inner or outer harm. May you have ease of being. practice of non-separateness, all things connected. So ultimately we do this practice so that we may awaken for the benefit of others. And again, whatever kind of energy or power or merit is created through our moments of insight or open-heartedness, that we willingly share them with beings everywhere so that they may benefit from our practice here. May beings everywhere be happy. Long talk, short method. The hour. Okay, go.
Where are you going, Joe? Where are you going?
Ladakh is where it's called. Where is that? It's also known as Little Tibet. And what it is there's, you have the Himalayas, and it's kind of like the western slope of the Sierra, and all the weather hits there. So right now it's terrible monsoon time, and floods. And you go up over the top of the Himalayas, and you come onto the Tibetan Plateau, which is anywhere, this is actually the lowest, about 10,000 to 15,500, which is right by where this Kailash, this mountain, not far from, actually the top. And there's a little section of it that's owned by India, so it's no longer, so it's not ruled by the Chinese. So it's just kind of stayed the way it's always been.
Kailash is where you went, where you walked up the mountain when you were getting altitude sickness and all that.
Yeah. That's a little higher, quite a bit higher.
So the dock is below that.
Yeah, it's only between 11 and 12.
But you're not on the monsoon side.
No, you're actually on the other side. Sometimes around K2 and stuff, over in Pakistan, some of the clouds come through and you do get some rain in the summer sometimes. But otherwise it's just high, dry desert. You know, it's sort of like Nevada in that way.
Are you going to sit?
Yeah, sit, and I've got the Dalai Lama there in the summer, and there's several monks that are there that I know that I'll be battling with. Keep me interested in how it all happens.
Will you be in like an air-conditioned place?
The other conditioned place. No, they do have, it was nice, somebody, they dug a well, a big well, deep well, and some Germans gave money and they actually have a solar water thing, but there's no power there. No.
When the Dalai Lama is there, is it like one of those conferences, or is he just hanging out and everybody gets to hang out?
Well, about a mile from where I am is his summer residence, but he doesn't come there every year, just once in a while, but you never really know. And he comes there, and there's this Tibetan refugee camp, large refugee camp there. So there are many refugees. And so he comes there to teach them and the Ladakis. So it's not kind of a Western scenes very much. It's really, there's something so original about them. It's like being in Native Americans, 100 years ago or something. And there's the vibe really very. I can't really explain it. But there's great kindness. It's poor. It's really only open. There are only two roads into it, and they both go over 17,500 foot passes. So they're only open. It's only open from June the 15th to about September the 15th. So you have really a 3-month window there, and then it closes down, and it's cold, wind, 40 below, and I think it keeps everything really pure in some way. I mean, just to go there, in a sense that it's really we're there as tourists and travelers, mostly Europeans, but it's 3 months, and the rest of the time it's their world. We can't handle their world, and there's all kinds of things like the snow leopard. People come up there in the different sections of the mountain. I only know one person that's seen the snow leopard. But I remember teaching that. Who was it? Somebody was there. Jenna, you saw the mountain lion?
Yes.
When I was teaching? And you saw it, Margot? I missed it. I missed it. I never seen it. It walked right, it pranced right by everybody. But me, I was looking up my nose.
Origin.
Oh, no. And didn't it actually
It
tear
tore,
Rob's
yes. It
tent?
tore Rob's tent down, yeah. So,
Something did.
No. I'm not going to talk anymore. Oh, yeah, please.
Is this the same cave area or cave that you talked about at the same retreat on the cremation grounds?
Yes.
Kind of
It just
surprised
happens to be
down
the
there.
cremation grounds. But that's what, when you look for caves, I saw it on the web, I saw this 40-foot picture of Milarepa with this cave underneath it. And I thought, oh, that's for me. But I should have thought, that if you have that, there's got to be something, reason that these yogis are there. I was not aware that why it was there was because it was next to a cremation ground. I don't want to talk tonight. Oh. I could.
You could start out with some jokes.
I could start up with some jokes, yeah, well.
What about the sky?
I was also thinking I could just read poems tonight. Such great material, Before everything.
Let's just do an all-nighter.